What's the most WTF thing you've seen go down in front of you? I was a kid, say around 7 maybe. My father and I were at the bank and he goes inside to do something and I stayed in the car. The driver's side door opens and this guy just gets in the car and looks down at the key. He finally turns and notices me, smiles and says, "Oh, sorry, wrong car." I then see him get into a completely different style and color car a few spaces down and drive away. As a kid, that scared the ever-loving crap out of me. Growing up, I worked on a passenger ferry to a town beach. One day we were on a layover between boats, sitting on the dock, eating lunch. It's quiet and there were ducks swimming by, really nice sunny day. All of a sudden, a swan swoops in from gosh knows where and literally lands on top of one of the ducks, forcing it under the water. The swan is literally sitting on this duck as the duck struggles to get free. After a while, the struggling stops. The duck the swan landed on does not come back up to the surface. In conclusion, I watched a swan drown a duck in cold blood. Two heavily pregnant women fighting, like seriously fighting. I'm talking fists, kicks, scratching, hair pulling. Everyone wanted to break it up, but nobody wanted to get in the middle of it. Maybe the babies inside of them were enemies in the past life and decided to continue their battle using their new mothers as flesh mecha Gundams. Driving home from work one night on the freeway, I look out of my window to see a yellow motorcycle zip past me, on its side trailing sparks. The driver had fallen off and was rolling past my car. As I watch him thinking, "Oh crap, he fell off, I hope he's okay," a black 4-door sedan rolls right over the top of the guy. And that was the first time I ever had to call 911. One day at college during the spring semester, birds started falling out of the trees. Most couldn't fly, some were dead, and others were unconscious and kind of twitchy. Really freaked everyone out. Biology department investigated, and they determined that a series of flash freezes kick-started the fermentation process of the new spring berries on the trees, and the birds were getting completely wasted. All I can say is, lucky birds. I can tell you, I would have saved several thousands in my life by now if I could get lit that cheaply. More stories of blotto animals followed. There was some zoo I visited in Florida where the mulberry trees dropped a bunch of overripe berries and the monkeys in the enclosure ate tons of them and got drunk as all heck. I've seen squirrels do this with walnut trees. The husk around the nut ferments, yard full of drunk squirrels. It was pretty cute actually. My aunt turned her barn into a nice little place to throw parties. Full bar and everything. One night a bunch of raccoons got in and managed to get into a bottle of whiskey and some beers. They got pretty hammered and went on a pigeon-killing rampage. Isn't nature amazing? Saw 2 people doing the deed against the wall of the main train station wall at 6:30 p.m. on a Friday night. The cops pulled the guy out of her 5 minutes after I showed up. So, my takeaway is that you were watching for at least 5 minutes. Maybe they hired those cops to be the contraception. Coptraception. Mine's a very gruesome what the frick. One time back when I was a student, I was waiting for my train home to leave, and as there were several minutes left, I was enjoying a sandwich outside on the platform. On the other side of the platform stood another train and a young couple, saying goodbyes and kissing, and the man still stood in the door as the train started to leave. I took a bite out of my sandwich. The man gave his girlfriend a last kiss and swung the door shut as he was jumping off. A piece of his jacket, or perhaps trousers, got caught up and he fell to the platform, got dragged under the train and promptly crushed in a gruesome fashion, with blood and other tissue spraying everywhere as his girlfriend stood and watched, paralyzed in absolute horror. People in the train were banging on the windows and screaming for it to stop. People on the platform were in absolute panic and some of them had bits of the unfortunate guy on them. And I stood there with a half-chewed bite of my sandwich in my mouth and my jaws wide open in astonishment. I don't think I will ever again see something as disturbing in my life happening so innocuously and within a few heartbeats, or chews. My husband and I were in a mall in Bethesda, Maryland when we passed a Tyson chicken kiosk where Mary Lou Retton was demonstrating how awesome Tyson chicken is. We watched for a moment and then walked on toward the mall exit. A short way down the mall we see a young woman escorting a person in a chicken costume towards the kiosk. The chicken appears to be splattered with blood-red paint and they're carrying a bucket. They pass us and we stop. "Did you see? Was that a chicken?" Not wanting to miss what was sure to be a spectacle, we turned around and followed the chick and her chicken friend to the Tyson chicken stage. The chicken-costumed man runs towards the stage and tosses red liquid at Mary Lou Retton, who despite her Olympian status is unable to avoid it entirely. Security guards immediately rush the chicken and grab him, while the woman screams about how Tyson murders chickens. As security drags the couple away, we hear the young woman shouting, "Stop choking the chicken! Stop choking the chicken!" I still can't believe that happened. This happened in Ireland. That's Limerick City. We'd closed up the restaurant for the night and were cleaning it up. Two women began knocking on the doors, asking us to let them in. They looked pretty distressed, so we let them in. They'd been attacked on the street. We sat them down and rang the Gardaí. It was then we noticed the blood. One of the women had multiple puncture wounds on her back. She didn't even realize. They just felt the blow and assumed it was just punches, but whoever attacked them had stabbed them with a screwdriver or something. They were pretty upset, but were remarkably calm considering they were full of holes. Pretty what the frick moment for us in the restaurant. Shock and adrenaline can help you cope with anything, it seems. The EMTs arrived and took them to the hospital. Another time, same restaurant, late night after the nightclub crowd, drunk students. A guy in the queue dropped money, bent down to pick it up, and stumbled into another guy. The guy who got bumped turned and bent down, clamped his teeth around the stumbler's ear and tore it off, spat it out and nonchalantly ordered his food. We put the ear on ice and called the ambulance. The paramedics lost the ear en route, and the poor guy never got it reattached. Well, my life is pretty mundane, but here goes nothing. When I was in middle school, my family still had a big old box TV. In fact, its stand was an even bigger broken TV that was built into a wood frame and swiveled. So one day, I had an open soda on top of the working TV and accidentally moved the swivel, thus knocking the soda off it. It did a full flip and landed right side up. Not a drop spilled. I proceeded to run outside and scream like a maniac. Probably the highlight of my life. I dropped a McDonald's drink once, and it landed right on its lid and pushed the straw inside it and didn't spill. Did that right in school and had one kid see it. Why have none of my many beverages that I've spilled in my long lifetime ever done this? Perhaps I'm due for a few non-spill drops in my near future. I worked at a public shooting range for a number of years. One day back in '09, me and a few of the employees were unloading the rental pieces from the safe to be put out on the firing line. The guy in front of me pulled out an Uzi and an SKS, both semi-auto, and he broke the #1 rule of weapon safety and had them both pointed up towards him. Long story short, he dropped the SKS and the bolt went into the trigger guard of the Uzi, which had the grip safety disabled, which was inexplicably loaded as well. It shot through his thumb, which was over the barrel, and right through his head. He fell to the floor, but didn't die until the helicopter ride on the way to the hospital. I just don't get when people take weapon safety so casually. It's one rule, but gosh darn it, so many people can't follow it. I once saw a woman shoot herself in the stomach at a public range. Rather, I saw the blood trail, because after this woman shot herself, she calmly packed up, got in her car, and drove the frick away. All while bleeding out of her stomach and without anybody noticing. Saw it all on the tapes later. How she wasn't freaking the frick out, I will never understand. I once witnessed a Mexican standoff in a crowded parking lot. Did anyone end up firing, or was it a cliffhanger where you had to wait until the next episode? They ended up yelling at each other for a few minutes and then leaving. Anticlimactic, but it was the best outcome. There's this older woman who goes to the same gym as I do, probably early 60s with bright blue pigtails. The only thing she does at the gym is stand in the middle of the weight room eating a papaya like a chipmunk every single day. This has been going on for years. Hey, she took the first step. One of these days she's going to work out. In my middle school, a fight broke out between two girls. One of the girls yanked on the other girl's hair so hard a patch of it came off and you could visibly see some blood leaking out of that area. That scream was something I'll never forget. When I was 12, my whole street was running garage sales on a Saturday morning. Towards one end, there were two sales next to each other and one across the street. Everyone was out and about, including myself. I was surveying my spending options when out flies a deer from behind two houses, darts across the street and jumps right through the family room window of the house in the corner lot, shattered glass and all. From within the house, I could see the deer bucking wildly and spattering blood all over the white-painted walls. The father commando rushes in, and after 17 seconds of chaos, yelling and screaming, the deer struggles back out of the window and limps away, bleeding a trail behind it. The commando dad slowly comes back out at the front door carrying his 6-year-old girl. She's pale white from shock and has her father's neck in a vice grip. She was the one screaming. The deer was later found dead 4 blocks away. It's super vanilla, but one time I drove by a topless, obese man taking a kitten out of a mailbox. That was like 5 years ago, and I still wonder about the context. Finally, I got some tail. Just a few days ago, dolphins in the river. I thought I'd gone crazy, but then I saw them 5 more times in the next 30 minutes. I'm still searching in the web whether it's possible. Is it? River dolphins are a thing, man. Google them. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. I saw an ambulance hit a person riding a motorcycle. Don't know if that made it lucky or unlucky for the motorcyclist. I was in my car turning around to get into a parking space when I see that the space I wanted was occupied by a woman sitting on the curb taking a dump. Needless to say, I parked elsewhere. Was walking in central London to university about 6 years ago. Just me and 2 guys ahead on their bikes on the pavement chatting. They looked real normal. A city police van drives past me and stops at the traffic light. Suddenly, about 5 officers burst out of the back with SMGs, a rare sight in the UK, and grab these 2 guys, guns in their faces, and drag them into the vans, sirens on, and off they go. Biggest what the frick is why I didn't take the 2 free bikes. Taking the vehicles of 2 wanted suspects that may or may not have had substances stashed in them for all you know might not have been your best move in the long term. Best leave them be or take them to the station yourself. You know, a similar thing happened to me. I was driving to my parents in a suburban area and I stopped at a 4-way stop. Another car at the stop sign to the right of me stopped first. I was waiting for him to go. Suddenly, 3 cars box this one car in against the curb and 4 undercover cops get out. They pull the guy out of the car, bend him over the hood of his car, cuff him, and throw him into the back of an unmarked police car. Then I guess they were calling for backup and tow trucks, since they had their lights going and were standing on their walkie-talkies. I just sat at the 4-way stop, jaw hanging open until everything settled down. Then I just continued on my way. I think back to that and wonder if it actually happened sometimes. My first day in Seattle, way back in the summer of '99, I saw a hipster on Capitol Hill in unzipped skinny jeans walking his dog with the leash handle around his Frankenbeans. Welcome to Seattle, where you can see at least one seriously what the frick moment every single day without even trying. I saw a lady I refer to as the Bird Lady in the metro station in Shanghai, China. She was putting sausage into her mouth, chewing it up so it was in small pieces and salivary, and then spitting it back into the waiting mouth of her granddaughter who had her mouth open and waiting like a little bird. It was gross, and I still remember it 4 years later. Riding the train on my way home from work one Friday night, and a small group of college students comes on, clearly already pre-gaming at like 6 p.m. They're talking and being loud, and I notice that one of the girls has some stuff leaking out of the little drawstring bag she's bringing with her. I think to myself, damn, that's gonna suck when she finds out. Not a moment later, she turns to her friends and says, "Hey guys, I just peed, ha!" And without missing a beat, they all just laugh and one guy goes, "Oh, Brittany." And they all just get off the train as the doors open, still laughing and being kids, while the rest of us commuters are just staring dumbfounded at this puddle of pee on the floor now. A monkey once jumped onto my lap. I was in a car in Asia and stretched out its hand. I gave it $1 and it ran away and gave it to its master, who was waiting nearby. What are they gonna do? Arrest a monkey? It's genius. Walking through a forest path at my university, I saw 2 crows taking on a snake. I watched for like 5 minutes as the birds were trying to peck at the snake and the snake was picking which bird to lunge at. It seemed like the birds were going for the snake's eyes. It felt like that scene in Chamber of Secrets where Fawkes takes out the basilisk. A drive-by on a neighbor's house, in the middle of the day, in apartments, while we had a party and a bouncy house out front full of kids. A few months ago, I was driving on the motorway and a car pulled over into the hard shoulder ahead of me. The passengers jumped out and literally a few seconds later, it just exploded, like Michael Bay level exploded. Luckily, the passengers were just far away not to be harmed. I was with a friend passing by a bar terrace when one guy stepped in front of us, dropped down onto his knee and proposed to me. He actually had an engagement ring and held out his hand. His friends kind of gathered around and cheered on. I just laughed and walked around him. Forgot to say I was 16 or 17 at the time and the guy was in his mid-20s. Be sure to carry around a positive pregnancy test for the next time this happens, so you can pull it out and tell him you dreamed this would happen because your little family will soon be 3. Last summer, some friends and I decided to go and drop acid down at a lake near where we lived. We found a comfortable private spot to set up camp and began our trip. About 3 to 4 hours in, we start swimming around, tripping our balls off as we play in the water and watch the clouds go crazy. Then, we hear some noises and look over to see a fat, shirtless redneck in jean shorts and his wrinkly, way too tan wife steering a small boat towards the shore near us. We start to get a little worried as they get nearer and nearer, not sure how we're going to play it cool with them being that close to us. Then all of a sudden we see a little wiener dog hop off the boat, followed by another and another, until eventually there are 7 little wiener dogs running around the shore right in front of us. After what was probably 30 minutes to an hour, the man whistled and they all ran back to the boat and hopped in, sailing into the sunset never to be seen again. It was a very strange occurrence and I wouldn't have trusted my own eyes if my friends hadn't seen it as well. Sitting at a cafeteria late at night in my shady neighborhood, a BMW drives up the parking lot and a man gets out and walks away. BMWs are not something you leave unattended here, so it was already a bit weird, but whatever, I have food. A few minutes later, another guy walks up to the car looking around suspiciously. He grabs the frickin' keys from behind the front wheel somewhere, gets in and drives off. I have no idea what kind of deal this was, but if you get a frickin' BMW for free with it, then I ain't seen nothing. So if whatever you're selling comes with a $40,000 luxury sedan, are you dealing in multi-million-dollar munitions chips, or were there just 2 Stormy Daniels in the back seat? At my university, I watched an eagle, which aren't common in my area, swoop down and kill a squirrel early in the morning. It was at LSU, and it was a bald eagle. As for the squirrel, I have no idea. A typical brown squirrel, I suppose. It was pretty brutal, but the squirrel was instantly lifeless as soon as the eagle made contact, so at least it wasn't made to suffer. My friend nearly shot me in the face when I was 15. I showed him my brother's SIG 9mm with hollow point bullets, then took the clip out and handed it to my friend. He proceeded to point-blank aim the weapon at me and pull the trigger. With one in the chamber, it literally put a small cut in the shoulder of my shirt. "What the frick, man? Why is there one in the chamber?" "What the frick, man? It's a piece. Don't point and shoot unless you plan to kill." "What the frick myself, not checking the chamber. You know your brother's an idiot." I was driving through town one evening and I stopped at a stop sign. I looked out my window and see a kid 10 years old or so dressed up like a banana. We make eye contact and he starts dancing. What the frick?
Did you check your watch to see if it was peanut butter jelly time?
I was on vacation this past year in the Dominican Republic and for some reason our rental had issues. When turning the car on, the alarm would go off and not shut off. Eventually we learned to deal with it and just drive until it shut off. So one day we're driving with the alarm on and one of their army men pulled us over. We anticipated him coming up to say something about the alarm. Instead, he starts chasing down a Haitian selling fruit. The Haitian tries to run and the army man shoots him with his M16. I crapped myself at that moment. I saw a seagull eating another dead seagull in a Sears parking lot. It happened when I was 12. On my way home, a strange guy, probably 16 or 17, appeared in front of me. I was scared as frick because he looked very brutal. He then came directly towards me and kissed my cheek, followed by the words, "God loves you," and then proceeded to run away, laughing like crazy. I nearly crapped my pants, but it was worth it. I was at a party with some mates, and of course beer pong starts going down. Now, one of my mates was so wasted out of his mind that he could barely stand up, let alone get anything in. Adding to this, he was the worst at any sport you could think of. But somehow, in his inebriated state, he was getting every single ping pong ball in all the cups. He must have had an 80% accuracy rate or something ridiculous. He remembers none of it.
He was so drunk he forgot he was crap at sports.
I don't know if it's the most what the frick thing, but it did just happen. I was driving along and saw a car ram into the back of a black SUV. The SUV pulls over and the car stops. 3 angry, obese Asian men jump out of the SUV carrying tire irons and a baseball bat, and literally jump on the car, battering the crap out of it, breaking the windshield, etc. One of them breaks the passenger's window and tries to drag the driver out. The driver backs up at speed, fat Asians tumbling everywhere. Puts it into drive to ram the car again. Fat Asians are running into the SUV now, while the car dude backs up, rams them, backs up and rams them again. Fat Asian SUV speeds away, weaving through traffic, followed by broken windshield, jacked up sedan guy, music still blasting from the speakers. In Philly back in the 80s, going into the Spectrum to see the Sixers play the Knicks, guy got stabbed in the chest about 20 feet in front of us. He fell to the side with his blade sticking out of his chest next to the turnstile. People passed by him like it was nothing. I was walking in St. Petersburg, Russia, while studying abroad. We were in a shopping or residential area off Nevsky Prospect when a police car shows up. Now, this wasn't an area where cars normally went, so it was strange. Then 4 guys got out of the car, opened the trunk, and put on FSB bulletproof vests and small arms. They looked like SMGs, but I wasn't close enough to tell. They then proceeded to walk into an apartment building. I told our group we had to get the frick out of there. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.